What is going on, guys? It is time for another Pop Culture Crisis movie review that is not a movie review. It is a television review, this time for Reacher Season 2, Episode 7, entitled The Man Goes Through, which, heads up ahead of time, last week I actually had to cut it out of our review for that episode because I called that episode A Man Goes Through. That was New York's finest. So I was like editing it and I was like, oh, that was a mistake. And back with me once again to talk about it, Wesley.
Hello.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm well. How are you?
Okay, so I'm good. And here's the funny thing about the show. I really do believe, now more than ever, with each episode, that this was not meant to be released week to week. I believe that this was meant to be watched in one long chunk because the pacing of the show is so steady that that's not a bad thing. Like a lot of I started watching a show called Outer Range last night from 2022. It's awful. It's Josh Brolin, right? And it reminds me of this other Amazon Prime. Oddly enough, all of these are Amazon Prime shows. There's another show called The Peripheral with Chloe Grace Moretz, and they all have this kind of even mundane like slog pace to it, and this show feels like it almost is in the same vein, but it's actually good, so it doesn't feel that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have the huge ups and downs. Even in this episode, you get a pretty big action scene, but the pacing feels so consistent throughout it. It just feels like you're supposed to watch this show all in one sitting, the way I did season 1, and that's what I loved about season 1 so much. Do you get that feeling when you're watching this?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I do think that there is a little bit of effort to make it. I guess
resolutions at the end of each episode.
Well, I would say cliffhangers at the end of each one. Like, something does happen at the end of each episode. It always ends right after something happens. But that is how binge shows are. They want to say, like, oh, well, I gotta watch the next one right now.
Yeah.
And so I guess you got a point there. It doesn't. They don't. I would say it's the opposite of resolution. It's something has ended.
Or continuation, I should say.
There's always a question at the end of the episode, which is good. I just hope they don't do that with the finale, where you're like, oh, come on, now I gotta wait.
Well, no, season 1 had a pretty good. I was actually surprised because not knowing where the show was going to go at the end of season 1, and you realize that he's moving on to the next town. I was like, oh, so I'm not going to get Finley or Roscoe in season 2, which was a bummer because I actually enjoyed the interactions in season 1, so that was actually a bummer to me. So
we got Finley though, right?
Yeah. So we've seen Finley. We got Finley for one episode in this one. So this episode essentially picks up again pretty close to where we left off. Russo is dead, and we are now. Oh, by the way, guys. Damn it. Spoilers. Alert. I'm assuming most of you understand that there will be spoiler alerts here. Plus, we're releasing this pretty close to when the new one comes out. Anyways, that one comes out tonight. So I think we'll probably review that one tomorrow in the morning. Right? So we pick up where we left off, and they essentially have to get the mom and the daughter out of town as quickly as possible because they're going after Langston right away. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So once you go and you have to go do that, so they send the mom and the daughter out of town, and then from there we essentially go right into things. He goes over.
I do want to point out, like, they do a little bit more O'Connell obfuscation.
I have new thoughts about that too. Okay, so what we're talking about here is I've made a point in just about it's O'Donnell. O'Donnell. So they make a point in just about every episode to point out that O'Donnell is a changed man and that he is he's a fantastic father, which is really, really good, and I've enjoyed that. He's had oddly enough the most consistent character. Like growth, not growth, but he's the most continuous. They've focused on that arc of his character very much throughout all 7 episodes so far. Whereas a character like Dixon, like, you get a couple episodes here and there about him and Reacher, or about her and Reacher, excuse me, being intimate and
that's about it.
And like weirdly longing for each other, despite the fact that Reacher is, like you said, pretty much a sociopath, and I don't know if he actually knows how to long for another human being, right?
Yeah,
but I now believe. Okay, so originally I thought this was because he was a bad guy. I thought like he sold out. I thought that mostly because I think it was like in episode 3 or 4 when he indicates that he knows how to get a hold of this legislative aid, this dude who writes the bills for Senator Lavoie. I'm like, why does he know these people? Why is he pushing that the idea that Swan is guilty so hard? But now I'm starting to wonder if maybe he's going to meet a bad end by the end of this.
Oh, that's why they're pushing it
Yeah,
rather than...
like I'm starting to think like it could be. Those are my guess. If I had to put money on it, it'd be one of those two things, right?
Yeah.
That of all these characters, O'Donnell will be the one that either double turn or turns on them or meets a fateful end, because either way it indicates a callback to the story that we've heard about earlier about him, starting off as a sort of a womanizer and turning into a family man.
Yeah, like
there's a story there either way.
Yeah, I could see his arc ending with like he sacrifices himself, saves Dixon.
Yeah.
In some sort of like they make a break for it, that kind of. Or Reacher, because they've already shown one person try to sacrifice themselves for Reacher. So there's some sort of like there is something going on. I can't overlook what I was talking about last week. The thing where he said, "I gave my kids my burner." It seems like a lie. It seems like he's like, "Oh, it's my kids," and it's like, is it, or are you talking to somebody you shouldn't be talking to?
The best way to check and see if that's true is so I was talking with someone last night, and they were telling me like it took them an embarrassingly long amount of time to understand that when you see like a previously on for a television show, that means that's what they're going to talk about in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
So if that scene gets mentioned in the previously on, that could very well indicate
the
that you're
other
right.
thing is that like, and this just came to me now, that literally could be like they wrote themselves into a hole. It's like, oh, we can't take our personal cell phones because we'll be tracked. So for them to get in the plot point that he's a good dad, they're just like, oh, we give the kid, that's it.
Yeah.
It could be that.
Yeah.
But
I would almost think
it seemed
that,
fishy.
like even though it would have been a writing hole, I would have just not mentioned it.
Yeah.
Like I would have put the scene in there, not mentioned that it was the burner.
You could have had him go to a payphone.
Yes.
I call that.
Well, I mean, if those actually like it would be really really funny to be like, we found the one payphone left in. There's one here. Like in I don't know if it works. But there's one still standing.
I lived in Chicago for a long time. There's payphones. You can find them. They're not outside. They're inside.
So we have that, and then essentially, I had never, until you brought this up, it's really, really funny. I never really thought of the idea of the character as having sociopathic tendencies.
No?
I mean, I like the idea more of the character being someone with a very strong sense of like frontier justice, but not necessarily being sociopathic. But the more he kills people at will, not at random, but very pointedly kills specific people, I get that more now, and it's in the deadpan delivery of the character. Which, by the way, Alan Richardson, if you've seen Blue Mountain State, you know that he's not a one-note actor who's just doing something because this is all he knows how to do. He's actually a really, really good actor, and so you see him go after Guy Russo's lieutenant again by the fantastic Al Sapienza, who I love to see the fact that he's still getting lots of work in Hollywood, and they have this discussion first about who he needs to find next to question, but also talking to the lieutenant about the moral failings of his character and the moral strength of the Russo character, right? And I like that because it mirrors Reacher's thoughts on this whole thing at large, but also gives you a chance to see that he is not willing to make hard decisions and take people out, but it's not that he doesn't give the guy the opportunity to get out of it. He says, look, you can go for it, you're going to die, or you can tell me the information I need to know and turn yourself in. He goes, prison isn't a great place for ex-cops, but it's better than the alternative, barely. Which I really, really like, right? He understands that you live and die by the choices you make, and he's not afraid to make that choice for you if you're not going to do the right thing. But there's an interesting line that I also think speaks to what you said about his what he is mentally. Like, there's a line where he's talking to Neely later, where she's talking about the literal and figurative death of the 110th Investigative Division, and he says, "We put bad guys in the ground and we put bad guys in jail. I prefer the former." So he's saying he would rather put him in the ground than put him in jail, which is an interesting person to put in charge of a military police unit where, if you know something about the American justice system, you know that in most television shows, they would probably not phrase it that way. They would say the complete opposite. They would say, we prefer to put him in jail, but if we have to put him in the ground, we will. So it's an interesting reversal of that trope.
Yeah, I think I don't know what they specifically are trying to like indicate about him, but it seems more like rather than it just being him having bloodlust, it's that he thinks there's finality to it. You know, there's like, I never have to worry about this again. I don't have to worry about a corrupt prison system that will let them out early, deals being made, people with money being able to skirt punishment, which that's probably his perspective. But all of those things I still think are just dressing around that he likes to.
Yeah.
That he likes to kill people.
Yeah. It is very Dexter-esque.
Dexter, yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's like Dexter does have a code.
Yeah.
And it's to keep himself safe, you know, like, but you do marry yourself to that code in a way, because you don't have the feel. For a lot of people, it's feeling, you feel something is wrong. In this, it's like you become accustomed to something being wrong.
Yeah. From there, we get the flashback to the big bust that they have, the one he was explicitly told not to do in the previous episode. Of course, you know that's not what's going to happen. They're going to do it anyways.
I liked that scene.
Yeah.
Like there are a bunch of messy
I still
scenes.
think this show is very, very lacking in their action cinematography. Meaning that
you're not wrong.
Like to me, I was just reading this article about how Chad Stahelski is going to be manning both Highlander and John Wick franchises from here on out over at Lions. I mean, he was
and
always
he's trying
in
to get
charge
Star
of,
Wars.
So like when you look at the ability for that franchise to geographically show you action in a manner that feels very. First, like you feel like you're there because of how wide the shots are, because of how well organized it is. This show lacks in that. It's not the point of the show, but this is a pretty extensive sequence. It's got to be at least 5 minutes long, 5 to 7 minutes long. That essentially shows them make this drug bust. They find a whole bunch of did they say it was heroin? It was heroin or
cocaine?
I thought it said heroin.
Oh,
The powder looked white. It would have been brown if it had been. Heroin makes more sense coming back from Afghanistan.
It does, yeah.
It's in the tires of the
Pretty clever.
of the Humvees, which I thought was clever. Was a very clever thing, and that's a trope as old as time. The drugs coming back on vehicles. So you have this whole scene. I thought what was interesting is like, because like none of them, like only one guy gets arrested anyways. The rest of them essentially all end up dead. That the guy could have the guy who's in charge of the military unit, the one who put Reacher in charge of it, is now pissed because the colonel who put him in charge of all of this stuff is now going to have a bad rap. It's like, with all these people dead, they could have made this into whatever they wanted. Yeah. But they...
I don't understand that. That's kind of a weak plot point for me.
The idea that the drug bust would be bad for the colonel?
Yeah, you'd be like, I oversaw the biggest bust.
Yes.
Like, come on.
That doesn't make it, like, that was the first thing I thought of. That the colonel would be upset.
Yeah.
That
unless he was
busted.
on the take.
Yeah.
You know?
So, and that's the thing, right? So now...
But you could see him spinning it and being like, I love Jack Reacher, you know?
What was I always forget the character who the guy in charge of Reacher, Fields. That's the guy who's in charge. Like now, I'm starting to think that maybe he's behind the what's going on with Little Wing.
Oh yeah, I mean they are featuring him strongly. Yeah.
Like he could be involved, and they've kept, like there's precedent because it's
he could be using Swan's name and stuff too. Yeah.
But also like there's precedent there because like they've kept the good guys and the bad guys apart the whole, like we just now have Reacher and Langston seeing each other face to face at the very end of this episode. First time
they in the bus.
In the bus. Okay, but in general, they're not interacting. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, they're not interacting back and forth every episode in person, right? So like from there, he gives the lieutenant an option. Then the guy draws and he shoots the dude in the head, as you'd imagine, which sends him to the hospital to question further this another one of Langston's guys, where he essentially threatens to explode his urethra. Yeah. And does look like a kid like cutting up mice when he's like, I wonder what will happen. Yeah. Right. And Neely goes along with it. I like the attention to detail that they give Neely a glove to wear because she doesn't want to touch the guy when she covers the guy's mouth. That like it could have been a very easy way to break character continuity that she wouldn't have wanted to do that. Like if she had been surprise attacked, that makes sense that she wouldn't have a glove on, but if she's somebody who doesn't like touching other people and she's going to willingly make the first move to do so, they put a glove on it, not just to prevent evidence, I suppose, but Reacher doesn't wear gloves the whole time he's doing that, if I remember correctly. Also, he's about 3 times the size of your average doctor, which I just think is hilarious watching him at the hospital. So he questions this guy, they get the information they need, and then he just kills the dude anyways. Crazy.
Yep.
It was great. Right on par for the character.
Yep.
Is fantastic. So from there, they try to escape, and then the assassin that Langston sends to kill the guy, then they have to go after him. And
I like the element of like, they're like, oh man, he's doing exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like
he found a uniform and put it on, and then so from there they have to kill him, which actually he meets a brutal end with like a broken glass in the side of the neck. That was a pretty good use of like, it didn't look CGI, so it looked like it was probably a squib, like a pump squib that dispersed. I watched it on like a medium-sized TV, so maybe it was fake.
Oh, I think it was the saw. He fell on the saw.
No, I thought it was a broken piece of glass.
He was coming at her with a saw, like the reciprocating saw.
Okay.
And he fell on the
blood.
And like that's my vomit button is gushing from the neck, and so I was like, I'm out here.
Didn't want to watch that one?
Yep.
Don't want to watch that one? So from there, he gets a call from Senator Lavoie, or he calls Senator Lavoie, and basically says, I need the help of 2 of your dudes if you really want me to take these guys out. And then you get more of the senator essentially trying to like morally explain himself, which I thought was hilarious. Like, I still don't know how I feel about the show, like making the politician. I like the idea of leaving the politician as the gray character, right? He's not good, he's not bad. We understand that politicians are, in a lot of ways, the bad people in life. But there is a gray side to politics, which I think that they've explained really, really well now twice in this episode. The first time when his policy aide was the one who got arrested, and he explains like, look, it's dirty business, that's how things get done in Washington DC. And I like that, because one of the things that you always learn, and I think shows used to do this really, really well back in the day, is like, the good guys and the bad guys will always exist, there will always be cops, there will always be robbers, and above all of them will be the crooks in Washington that will always exist. So I actually don't like the idea of, say, the senator getting his comeuppance or something in this season. Like, I would rather that character stay there as the one that's more of an untouchable figure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and kind of an enabler for Reacher, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, plot-wise. Yeah.
So from there, after that, you see the character of AM take the delivery of the missiles and basically says, "Take me to." He needs to be taken to Langston to finish this transaction. A big loss for this episode is not having more of him, because I think that his character is fantastic. I love that actor. I don't know if we even mentioned in the previous episode him killing the cop. Like in the previous episode, I don't know if that even came up.
Yeah, it did.
Did we?
Yeah.
So from there,
my one little tidbit on that scene where he checks the missiles is he takes the crowbar, pops one nail in the crate. I was like, I love that trope. That trope.
Well, also then he doesn't. I love the idea that you check one, but not all
the
of
rest
them.
of them.
Like it's tropes that go by the wayside. Also, when this is a complete aside, when somebody used to touch the drugs and go like this, it's like, which could be anthrax for all you know, and just kill you.
It's the Breaking Bad.
So yes, it is. And then we essentially see Dixon and O'Donnell. They get captured off screen.
Yeah,
which means
that's annoying.
I believe that this show had a real dedication to keep these episodes at 42 to 45 minutes, because they get captured completely off screen. You don't see how.
You don't see anything. They're standing in a parking lot. And then it's like, oh, we got them. And it's like, come on, man. Like, which you could have. No, I disagree. It has nothing to do with the time. It has to be something else, because they spent so long in that car, like sitting outside. They didn't have to do like that entire bit with the drunk teenagers. Like,
by the way, the most Canadian extra I've seen since the X-Files was on air.
But like all of that could have been like accomplished in a shorter package, and you could have gotten
the stuff with the teen was because it says it gave him an idea.
I know, but it was so long, and like the whole process, I'm talking about that entire sequence from them arriving to him walking through the gate.
So you think that it's indication of something shady, meaning that like, so what does that mean, like one of them is the bad guy?
No, shady, like I think like budget maybe, or time, like not time like run time, but production time, or there had to have been something in the script, and they're like, this doesn't work. There's some sort of reason that's there. I may have experience in making shortcuts like this, but it sucks because that could have been like, there's either you're right and they're hiding a plot element, which I don't. But
that doesn't make sense because that's the opposite of show don't tell, which is a problem because that would indicate that either one or both of them is like a bad guy, but that doesn't make any sense because why would they be tortured? I guess like you could make the argument that like, oh, he might check the security camera footage, we got to make it look good, but like, are you actually saying that Dixon has them stab her in the arm?
Or it could be O'Donnell.
Again, but like
they did beat the hell out of him.
Yeah. So. Well, that was a weird scene because whenever I do these reviews, I watch it through twice, and after the first time I watched it, I'm like, did I miss something? Yeah. Like, it's completely possible that I missed it, and I didn't see how they got caught and stuff like that. Yeah. So then him and Neely, Reacher and Neely, they have to plan outside of how he's going to get in and how they're going to do things. He tells Langston that Neely's dead, to prevent him from being able to. Which
I also thought was dumb because, and she said, I was like, that doesn't make sense. And she was like, they're going to figure it out. And I was like,
but he says it bought him time.
Yeah. Did it? No.
Yeah. So then we get Reacher and Langston face to face as he enters the compound, and that's how this episode goes off air.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like there's better excuses. It just feels like those decisions had to happen to get to the end.
Yeah. And
it feels more like that. It feels more like we have to get from this hospital fight to whatever the next episode is, and it was a weird bridge. Like, it feels like any other excuse would have worked unless there has to be some sort of outcome, which I suppose that is writing. But I don't know. This was the first episode where I was pulled out by plot points.
Okay.
Like the other ones, like I'm kind of that moron that watches stuff and I'm like, well, this is how it happened. You know what I mean? Like I don't pick it apart immediately. I go back and watch it and then I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird.
I rarely even do that. Like most of the time I'm happy. Like if it's entertaining enough, if the scenes are constructed in a fast enough pace that I can let a lot of plot elements.
I can too.
Like a lot of I've been seeing like the people who are critical of the show are essentially saying that the characters have all this plot armor. I'm like, that doesn't bother me. Like but most of the time I'm okay with the premise that he is the good guy, therefore he's kind of almost invincible. Like if the
also
story
the point of the show is that
enough.
he's Hercules. You know what I mean? Like he's a superhero. And so of course that's going to happen. I do maintain they nerfed him a little bit to make the other characters seem he should be saving the crap out of these people every episode. And really, like they did that. They built him up in the first season so much that to be like, oh, and then the entire 110th is also superheroes.
It's not like it was a special forces unit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, if they were, like, why are the special investigators these, like, insane badasses? I understand why he is.
They would essentially be office pogues, which means that they would, like,
they'd be
they're
like
still
MPs.
military, but it's not the same thing as, like, somebody, like he mentions, he says to the senators, like, they're Rangers and SEALs. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, sure. If these people were members of, and again, there's women in the unit, so I don't think any, to this day, I don't think there's any special forces units that have women as member of those teams. Yeah. But the point is if they were ex-Delta, then that makes perfect sense, but that's not what this is.
Yeah, I think one smart thing is that most of the time when they have some sort of, the bikers notwithstanding, bikers would have beat the crap out of O'Donnell and Dixon and Neely. I'm sorry they would have, but everyone else in the show that they fought with have been like Craigslist level goons. Like, oh, here's a gun, and they're like, oh, okay, I spent 5 minutes learning how to use it, and they beat the crap out of them, which is a good way to it's cheap for the people doing the job. Most people are afraid of them because they have a gun, but the military people wouldn't be. But I don't know, like you were talking about Chad Stahelski. I think season 3 of Reacher needs to look into like somebody who's worked on those movies, somebody who's worked for him, and be like, hey, you're our new head of this, and we develop it a lot longer, and the show will have more legs. We're still kind of at this territory, like I don't know what's going to happen with the character of Marlo or her daughter. They've kind of been used as plot elements to push the story forward, so we'll have to wait and see with that. Was there anything else that you like really liked or really disliked about this episode? I just want to see how they're trying to round it out. It feels like they had so many elements going on at the start of it. It felt like a much bigger, more interesting story at the start. And as it's boiled down to, Langston is bad guy, it's lost a little bit of its luster. The first few episodes were it felt like very, like a conspiracy novel territory, but it's returned into like TV show and beat up the
season
bad
one was
guy.
kind of that way. The bad guy in season one, it fell into that world of like the generic bad guy, evil bad guy, go after evil bad guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I wanted more out of it, like a more interesting syndicate of people doing things.
The show's never excelled with the bad guys.
Yeah,
that is true.
But even confusing. Like, it's not challenging. It resolves itself into a very easy thing, which is like bad guy selling weapons, and it's like it would have been more interesting if there was like these things maybe were less connected than we thought, and just something different. And the beginning like kind of telegraphed it to me. The map trotting of the opening was cool, and now we've kind of settled into this like one area. That's going to happen because things have to come to an end, but like there was just more promise at the beginning of it, so it has lost it's lost a little bit of its what made it awesome in the beginning, but I'm still going to watch obviously the final episode.
Yep, and I think guys we'll end up reviewing that episode tomorrow. It comes out tonight, so that'll be a lot of fun to check it out. For me, like I said, I've enjoyed the pacing of this show. I really do wish I could have seen it all as one episode at a time. To me, the little moments of levity from Reacher also do it for me when there's no Clark bar. I enjoy those scenes from him. I think that Alan Ritchson excels at doing that type of humor. Like, his dry sense of humor really, really works for this show. And we'll wait and see. It's going to be quite a confrontation, I suppose, once we get Langston and AM all together. But my hope is that we get it resolved. My guess is that it'll get resolved pretty quickly, and the rest will be spent setting up the following season, which is what they did at the end of season one. You got a pretty extensive ending sequence with him saying goodbye to Finley and Roscoe and then being on his way. So we'll have to wait and see what comes of that. But guys, let us know down below, what did you think of episode 7 of Reacher? It was The Man Goes Through, and let us know, and we'll be back with a review for episode 8 soon. See you later,
tomorrow.
guys. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.